I was saying your boy Rico from RicoScores, and Dan Quinn is going crazy. We've already talked about how he would have the ability to put together arguably the best staff out of all of the head coaching candidates, and he's sticking true to his word, man. Washington Commanders have officially hired John Pagano and Ken Norton Jr. The Washington elite defensive staff just got even better. Even though positional coach hirings are not the most exciting news out there, I do still want to talk about why these hires are relative home runs. I'm telling you, both of these coaches were defensive coordinators at the NFL level before coming here. We have more coaches taking demotions to be a part of this elite staff, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to have elite development on the defensive side of the ball. I'm super excited. And of course, I got to talk about why I'm very optimistic about the Commanders' future. And I'm going to give the Commanders the benefit of the doubt, even with this Bobby Johnson hire, because I love the staff they're putting together, and they're shooting so well from the field. I'm just assuming that Bobby Johnson is a hit. I'll explain why in this video, even though I've already done a whole video breakdown on Bobby Johnson and why I don't necessarily like that hire, but we're going to stay optimistic, of course, because of signings like these two. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Stay tuned for all of the content. Again, we're back to making like multiple videos a day. Every little update that comes out, I'm going to keep y'all updated on it. We still have a few more positional coaches to hire, a few more positions to take care of. I'm going to keep you updated on all of that. And then as soon as we're done with all of that, we have all of that finished, we can start to move on to free agency stuff. We can start to do more mock drafts, all of that. So stay tuned. Without further ado, let's get it. All right, so let's start with John Pagano. Where I saw it first was Benjamin Albright saying former Chargers and Raiders defensive coordinator John Pagano will join the Washington Commanders staff. It's basically a senior defensive assistant is the best way to word it. He's a former Broncos assistant under Vic Fangio as well, and was a hot name in this cycle, and multiple teams were very interested in bringing him in for whatever reason. And so again, the fact that he chose us over all of the other opportunities that he couldn't gotten, same thing with Brian Johnson, same thing with Tavita Pritchard, same thing with Jason Simmons, same thing with Larry Izzo. I mean, we literally stole Larry Izzo from the Seattle Seahawks to come over for the same exact role, not even a promotion, with Dan Quinn. We've been putting together an elite staff this offseason. I'm super excited, and most importantly, we're getting a lot of guys that have had interest coming in from all kinds of teams, and they chose us. Adam Peters was arguably the top candidate for GM, and he chose us. We were to a point where it was Adam Peters versus Ian Cunningham, and then Alec Hallaby was like an afterthought at one point. And then after we hired Adam Peters, those guys decided, well, if we can't be the GMs for the Commanders, we might as well just go back to what we were doing already, which shows how much people really want to be a part of this staff. But moving on from that, this is another great hire, y'all. We can debate about the offensive coaching staff that I'm very high on as well overall, but this defensive staff is elite. I feel like we don't even have to debate that, man. The development that's going to happen in this DB group and this linebackers group is going to be phenomenal. Night and day from what we had last year with the staff that we had. Now, defensive lines coach, we're still waiting to hire that guy. We'll see. I love Ryan Kerrigan as an outside linebackers coach and a pass rush specialist. Again, like I talked about in my previous video when breaking down the Bobby Johnson hire, but also talking about Ryan Kerrigan being able to stay with that title that I just told y'all. It's really interesting because Dan Quinn runs a 4-3 defense, but when you're talking about an outside linebackers coach slash pass specialist coach, pass rush specialist coach, that sounds like running more 3-4, more Khalil Mack type of guys, less Montez Sweats and Chase Youngs. Really interesting, something to just keep note of. But out of the way, man, this defensive staff is elite. I can't wait to see who we hire as a defensive lines coach. But right now, every other coach that you could ever have on the defensive side, we're killing it right now. I'm very excited. And again, most importantly, we're bringing in guys that develop talent, proven talent developers. Super excited about that. So if the players that we currently have on our roster right now can't reach greatness with this staff, when will they? It's like literally we were having debates. Is it the player? Is it the coach? And last year, I feel like it's pretty clear that this time it won't be the coaches. So if the players aren't out there performing, we could assume that it's the player. Now, of course, there's a lot of things that could go down, a lot of different factors. For some reason, maybe these coaches being elite elsewhere could come here and not be elite. Of course, we got to take things into context. But as of right now, with the staff that we're building, I'm very confident that these players will reach their potential. Will Emmanuel Forbes ever live up to a first-round pick? We'll see. But I guarantee you he's going to be better than what he was last year. I can guarantee that. But going back to John Pagano again, even Ian Rappaport loves it. He said very smart hire by Dan Quinn. The league is better with as many Paganos in it as we can get. And what he means by that is that this guy is the brother of Chuck Pagano as well. I'm not sure if a lot of y'all knew that, if y'all caught on to that. I thought that was pretty interesting as well. And I'm not gonna lie, even though I don't need it, it's really nice to see the national media saying positive things about the Commanders, like they have the majority of this offseason for real. The national media analysts and reporters have loved a lot of the moves we've started making since we got Adam Peters. And starting with Adam Peters, we got a lot of praise for that. And ever since then, it's just been praise after praise, excitement after excitement. I'm hearing from different, like even when I'm listening to my draft podcast, they're saying, okay, the Commanders are finally looking like they're turning things around. It just took Dan Snyder to sell the team. And now they're actually putting together a great enough staff to where we can actually start to believe in these guys' future and things like that. So again, we don't need that. Most importantly, we need to go out there and win games. But to see the national media even liking the things that we're doing this offseason, I'm very excited. We haven't even gotten the free agency or the draft, and I'm expecting us to kill that as well. And also, John Pagano was a former Chargers and Raiders defensive coordinator, like I already said. He has 20 plus years of NFL coaching experience. So this is a seasoned veteran coming in to do some coaching, man. Most recently, he coached the outside linebackers for the Broncos, NFL-wise, 2020 through the 2021 season. But the very most recent thing he was doing was being the special assistant to UConn's head coach. And at first, again, people didn't exactly know what his title was, but I've seen confirmed from different sources that it will be senior defensive assistant. Now, of course, it's not very clear what that exactly means, but all I know is he's going to help this defense become better. I can tell you that. I can tell you that even with Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio running the defense last year, mostly Jack Del Rio, having a John Pagano on that staff last year, we would have been at least slightly better than what we were. This is a smart defensive mind, very seasoned guy, and having him on your coaching staff only helps. It literally only helps. And I don't know about that Bobby Johnson hire earlier today. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, and why I'm still optimistic about this coaching staff and why I'm optimistic about Bobby Johnson, because again, maybe they see something in him that we don't. They've been able to take and find these elite NFL minds all over the place for this front office, for this coaching staff so far. So if they believe in him, why shouldn't I? But we're going to dive into that a little bit more. And again, even though I'm not very high on that Bobby Johnson hire, I'm going to talk about why I'm optimistic a little bit later. But I really like this one. No doubt love this hire. Like I just said earlier, multiple teams were trying to hire him, and we won again. We won the Adam Peters battle, like I explained earlier. Like I said earlier, we stole Larry Izzo from the Chargers and Jason Simmons from the Raiders. We managed to keep Tavita Pritchard, even though several teams wanted him. And I'm assuming at least one of those teams is willing to give him some sort of a promotion compared to what he's doing here, just remaining as the QB's coach. And even Brian Johnson accepted a demotion to come here. Technically, the Eagles fired him, but he was just an offensive coordinator last year, and other teams were interested in him. I'm not sure if he was receiving offensive coordinator positions from other teams, but I know that he did take a step down to come here when he could have went somewhere else. People are lining up literally to join this Commanders organization right now. They can see the bright future that the Commanders are building, and I love it. We are winning hiring battles right now, y'all. It didn't seem like it with the head coach battle at first, but now everything else. And you can argue with the way that Dan Quinn is putting this staff together, you can argue that he was the right hire. And again, not just me, but several of us have said that even when we were in the stage where we preferred a Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick or Mike McDonald over Dan Quinn, I made the point, and I feel like a lot of other people probably felt the same way, that Dan Quinn, with his veteran presence in the NFL, his ability to make connections. He has strong connections, a lot of relationships with people around the NFL, that he could arguably put together the best staff. Ben Johnson's never been a head coach. Mike McDonald's never been a head coach. Bobby Slowick has never been a head coach either. It would be difficult for them to put together a staff. And not only is Dan Quinn coming in and just immediately started killing his staff hires, his coaching hires and things like that, but then he even stole Larry Izzo from the Seattle Seahawks to do the same exact thing for us that he was doing for them. I mean, that's just phenomenal work. Dan Quinn is doing his thing. So you can even argue that Dan Quinn was the right hire. And I'm very optimistic about what we got going on right now. Now that we have John Pagano here, I mean, basically go out there and get my boy Antoine Winfield or Brian Burns and let's get to work, man. Let's go ahead and get busy. But that's not all of the great news. Former Raiders and Seattle Seahawks defensive coordinator Ken Norton Jr. is joining the Commanders as just simply a linebackers coach. Again, these are two previous defensive coordinators coming in for smaller roles, so they get to focus on what they do best. They're used to handling and managing all sorts of things, doing defensive play calling, all of that type of stuff. Now they're coming in Ken Norton's case, to just literally spend all of that energy that he's normally had being able to multitask and just focus all of that energy, time, and effort into just making sure the linebackers develop and play well. I'm very excited about that, man. He's a former all-pro linebacker, so if anybody knows what he's doing and what he's talking about, it's him. And Norton was most recently coaching at UCLA. Now he reunites with his former Seattle colleague Dan Quinn in Washington. I believe he was the linebackers coach while Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator for the Legion of Boom. So there's that connection going back there. Also, shouts out to Chad Ryan over there in the UK or Australia. I think he's in Australia. Either way, he said the son of boxer Ken Norton, one of the few men who have the ability to say that they beat Muhammad Ali in the ring. That's a really interesting tidbit right there. And if you want to go down Ken Norton's past, as a player, he played for the Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. Again, 3-time Super Bowl champion, first team All-Pro in 1995, second team All-Pro in 1993, 3-time Pro Bowler, all kinds of achievements as a player. And then as a coach, USC's linebacker coach for a few years. Then he moved up to assistant head coach and linebackers coach for USC. Then he went to become the Seattle Seahawks linebacker coach, and he was working under Dan Quinn for a couple of years. And then he became the Oakland Raiders defensive coordinator with how great of a job he did as the Seattle Seahawks linebackers coach. So you should be very excited about that. He did such a great job for the Seattle Seahawks as their linebackers coach that he was able to become a defensive coordinator for the Oakland Raiders for a couple of years. And then he took that and became the defensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, returned back to his old job, but instead of being a linebackers coach, the defensive coordinator there. Then he went all the way down to UCLA to become their linebackers coach, and then we just took him from UCLA to become our linebackers coach. I'm very excited and optimistic about this hire. Again, both of these hires, I want to emphasize this, were defensive coordinators at the NFL level before. More demotions to be a part of potentially a great staff. I'm really excited about that. They're so used to having so many things on their plate. So for them to be able to just sit down and focus on one particular thing is huge. Brian Johnson, elite quarterback developer. But then once he became offensive coordinator, his play calling wasn't the best. Now that he's coming here to focus solely on helping develop whatever quarterback we potentially end up taking in the top 3 of the draft, and also being like the passing game coordinator, taking like somewhat of a step down, so he doesn't have to worry about play calling. He doesn't have to worry about and spreading himself thin everywhere. He just gets to focus on that. And that's the theme of a lot of coaching hires that we've made this offseason. And most notably, these two guys that, again, were both defensive coordinators at one point in time at the NFL level, not just college, the NFL level. And going back to that Ken Norton and Dan Quinn connection, how they worked together back in Seattle, they go way back. It says something not only about what the Commanders are building here, the fact that he wanted to come here as a linebackers coach when he's already been a defensive coordinator at the NFL level before, but also as far as Dan Quinn goes, it's interesting that Ken Norton wanted to follow him to the Commanders after working with them for the Seattle Seahawks. That shows that whatever they did together, he really liked it, and he was like, let me come be your linebackers coach once again. I've been a defensive coordinator. I've been all the way up there. I've pretty much done everything you can do except for be a head coach, and I'm willing to come be a linebackers coach for you based off of our previous experience and what you're building here. And also, even on the Ken Norton side, like why I'm even more excited about Ken Norton is because Dan Quinn has seen him literally do that, be a linebackers coach in his defense, in the defense that he likes to run, his scheme and all of that, and he feels like he's a perfect fit. And he probably has been waiting for a long time to even be able to get this guy as a linebackers coach, but he's just been accepting other jobs. And for some reason, Dan Quinn becoming the head coach of the Commanders, Ken Norton was like, sign me up for that, rather than being the linebackers coach for Dan Quinn and any other opportunity that he's had. Really interesting. So again, man, Ken Norton Jr. coaching up the linebackers. If Jamin Davis can't work out now, when could he? And not only their ability to coach and develop, but also to scout. Like, I trust this staff to find the right linebackers in the draft or free agency better than I did the previous staff, for sure, the previous regime. I definitely have higher hopes and optimism for them to be able to identify the right guys. I mean, nobody's perfect coming out of the draft, but you got to find the right strengths and weaknesses. You got to find the right traits that fit what you're trying to do defensively, schematically, all of that type of stuff, as best as possible, and I trust these guys to be able to do that better than anybody. Now you have Dan Quinn as the head coach, Joe Witt Jr. as your defensive coordinator, and Jason Simmons as your defensive passing game coordinator, and now also Ken Norton Jr. as your linebackers coach. Again, a night and day improvement over what we had going on last year. Even outside of just Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera, the guys under them, I love this staff way more than I like that previous staff already. And I'm sad to see a guy like Randy Jordan leave for what I believe is the Titans job, but I feel like overall this is a huge upgrade over what we had last season. We're going to do a full dive into who we've already hired, which positional coaches we've already filled, and which ones we still have left towards the end of this video. Stay tuned for that. And you know what's super crazy, actually? Shouts out to Rush Manuel, per usual, for the crazy background info and connections. Really crazy pull from him. Today's new Commanders coaches, all of them, Bobby Johnson, John Pagano, and Ken Norton Jr., all have something in common. They were on the Raiders staff under head coach Jack Del Rio. Speaking of the devil, that's crazy, man. So are all three coaches that we just hired today, even the one offensive one, since they all happen to be with Jack Del Rio in Oakland, do the Commanders view it as a situation where they feel like it wasn't their fault? It was more so Jack Del Rio's, and the Oakland Raiders defense was so great when it was because of those coaches, well, at least two of them, versus the fact that Jack Del Rio was the defensive coordinator, and just based on the fact that Jack Del Rio didn't work here, they feel like those guys are owed more credit for how the Raiders defense was working. So let's bring those guys in. Really interesting, man. They're probably looking at it like, hey, that was Jack Del Rio's fault last year. Let's bring in those positional coaches that got greatness out of those Raiders defensive players a few years back. So now Dan Quinn's defensive staff is looking crazy. Again, defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr., linebackers coach Ken Norton Jr. You have passing game coordinator Jason Simmons, who made a lateral move to come here from the Raiders. And then you also have pass rush specialist Ryan Kerrigan. Now we're still looking for a defensive lines coach and technically a DB's coach, but we'll talk about DB's coach really soon. And of course, my number one candidate for that. And now on just an overall breakdown of the staff, we have head coach Dan Quinn, offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, passing game coordinator Brian Johnson, QB's coach Tavita Pritchard, and offensive lines coach Bobby Johnson. On the offensive side of the ball, we still need a running backs coach. Randy Jordan just left. Tight ends coach, they already said we're not bringing him back, and a wide receivers coach. Then on the defensive side, like I already said, Joe Witt Jr., defensive coordinator, passing game coordinator Jason Simmons, senior defensive assistant now John Pagano, linebackers coach Ken Norton Jr., and assistant linebackers coach / pass rush specialist Ryan Kerrigan. We still need a defensive lines coach and a DB coach. And then special teams, we have Larry Izzo. That's the full breakdown of what we have going on right now. And I feel like so far, at minimum, this is an A- coaching staff. Now, of course, we have a lot of football to watch. It's hard to really judge the coaching staff until they go out there and show that they can work together. They have chemistry. They can bring the best out of players like they've done in their previous stops. But just because they've done it elsewhere does not necessarily mean that they're going to automatically come here and do it. So, of course, it's hard to give them a grade immediately. But I may do a video later on down the line grading all of these hires that we've made so far. As of today, I would literally give it like an A-. I'm that excited about it. I'm not going to give it an A+. I'm not going to act like we just absolutely killed every hire, but we've exceeded my expectations mightily. I feel like if they would have met my expectations, it would be like a B. I feel like A- is perfect because A+ means absolutely no misses, automatic, best case scenario that you could ever put together for a coaching staff. And I mean, that's pretty much impossible. I don't think any coaching staff is that great. I mean, a lot of teams, even the Chiefs, you could I probably ask some of their fans and they'll say, yeah, there's still a couple of positional coaches I don't like, but they're still out here winning Super Bowls. No coaching staff is perfect. So I would give them relatively an A- at the very least. Now, offensive lines coach is still the hire that I like the least by far, but I love all the rest of them. But again, I'm assuming that they have a plan, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Also, I think it's very interesting that they announced, I feel like knowingly announced, the least attractive hire earlier in the day and then came out soon afterwards with the far better, more obviously likable hires. I feel like that's good PR management from Dan Quinn and company. I feel like that may have been on purpose. Yeah, we're going to hire Bobby Johnson. Let's go ahead and put that out there first and then come immediately with great news after that to kind of distract them and throw them off of that Bobby Johnson hire. Yeah, they know how PR works. They know how human emotions work. And I feel like it probably did work. Now for DB's coach, y'all already know that I'm hoping that the Cowboys defensive coordinator, the new one, wants somebody else for the DB's coach, and then Al Harris is a free agent, and then the Cowboys can't block us from getting him at that point because he's technically fired by the Cowboys. That's what I'm rooting for. And then the other positions like running backs, I mean, I guess I will have to do more research to find the guy that I want there. I had an offensive lines coach in mind. I really wanted to steal Hank from the Lions, but I mean, I highly doubt that was going to happen. That was very unrealistic expectations for that to happen anyway, so I'm not surprised. Tight ends coach, I don't have a guy yet. Got to do more research on that. Defensive lines coach, again, my boy Serge the Shooter, the best Commanders photographer doing it. Make sure you follow him. He tweeted out that he has some inside information, a rumor going around from an inside source that it may be an ex-legend from the Washington Redskins from back in the day that is the defensive lineman, maybe like a Hall of Famer type of guy. He said he doesn't exactly know how much he trusts the source and needs to see it to believe it, but he's just putting that information out there. And then DB's coach, again, like I already said, Al Harris for me. And then that will be it for the coaching staff. And then we can completely focus on free agency and stuff like that, which I'm really excited about. Now, shouts out to my boy Resh Manuel for pulling this up as well and providing this point, because I completely agree. These are the things I've been saying. While not every hire will be a home run, by and large, we're seeing Quinn's staff hire reflect his ability to attract top talent. A key trait that Josh Harris talked about. If you want to see that clip, here it is right now.
To be elite, you've got to attract elite people, right? And so his ability to attract those people really stood out to us.
So it sounds like Dan Quinn got his guy. And based on that Adam Peters initial presser, when he said that leadership would be the thing that they're looking for the most in a head coach, it sounds like Adam Peters got his guy. Now, I'm not going to sit here and fake like Dan Quinn was the #1 candidate all along. But it sounds like Josh Harris and Adam Peters are very happy. And at this point, with the hires we've made around Dan Quinn, I don't even know if I would have it any other way. I'm not sure if we bring in Ben Johnson as a head coach, we're able to pull over Joe Witt Jr. and John Pagano and Jason Simmons to be a part of the defensive staff, or Kid Norton Jr., any of those guys. I'm not sure if we bring over like a Mike McDonald, if we're able to get a Cliff Kingsbury and a Brian Johnson and all of these guys and able to retain Tavita Pritchard as a QB's coach. I don't know. Who knows? So looking back, hindsight is always 2020. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I didn't really want Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, or Mike McDonald. But so far, things are really looking up for us right now. And it seems like the best situation all along was taking place. It looks like we're building an elite staff. And there's no guarantee that with the hiring of either of those other head coaching candidates that we would have had a staff this great top to bottom, man. Which takes me to why I'm so optimistic about this coaching staff, even including Bobby Johnson. Again, like I've been saying in several videos, several live streams, what is the point about being this excited about Josh Harris buying the team from Dan Snyder if we're not going to give him the benefit of the doubt on his decisions? What's the point of us acting like Adam Peters was the best GM candidate potentially out there and we got him, we won the offseason already, if we're not going to trust who he hires for the rest of his coaching staff? What's the point of being excited about every move that we've made so far? We're so excited about hiring even these guys, John Pagano and Ken Norton Jr., with the same genius that it took to bring those guys in, to choose those guys to come help our coaching staff. I'm just going to assume that Dan Quinn's brain wasn't broken when he decided to hire Bobby Johnson. So maybe he knows something that we don't. Again, I'm going to give all of these guys the benefit of the doubt because I love this coaching staff that we're putting together. That the hiring of a Bobby Johnson, why I do question it a lot, I have no choice but to give those guys the benefit of the doubt. Similar thing with the quarterback situation. I don't care. I prefer a Jayden Daniels at number 2. Of course, Caleb Williams is my number 1, but he's going to the Bears. So ignoring Caleb Williams, I prefer Jayden Daniels number 2. But if for some reason, some insane reason, we end up drafting, say, like a Bo Nix, I would be heartbroken. But at the end of the day, I'm going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt every step of the way until they lose that benefit of the doubt. Because so far, they've exceeded my expectations and hopes before all of this started. Going back, say like October, November, I didn't expect us to have this elite of a front office and this elite of a coaching staff at all. They've exceeded all of my expectations, and I'm just going to assume that no matter what we do with that second overall pick, trade back, trade up, take a quarterback, don't take a quarterback, I'm going to assume that this elite group of NFL minds did all of the research, put in all of the time and effort to come to that conclusion. And again, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until they no longer deserve it. So let's go. Even though I don't necessarily love the Bobby Johnson hire, I'm assuming there's some type of strategy to it. Maybe there's something we're missing that they know. But either way, I feel like John Pagano and Ken Norton Jr. are without a debate great hires. Again, it's hard to say like home run hire when it's like a linebackers coach or a senior defensive assistant. Of course, a lot of people aren't very excited about those things. The casual fan cares nothing about positional coaches. But as a deep analyst like me that cares about every little thing that this team has going on, especially when it comes to the development of talent that we already have here, like a Jamin Davis and Emmanuel Forbes, Percy Butler, Quan Martin, Derek Forrest, a lot of the guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where I feel like they have talent, we just haven't had the right coaching staff to get it out of them. I'm telling you, man, y'all should be very optimistic about this situation. So yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. Of course, especially let me know how you feel about the hiring of Ken Norton Jr. as the linebackers coach and John Pagano as a defensive senior assistant. Man, I'm really excited about both of those hires. But if you're not for any reason, let me know that too. If you are excited, let me know why. If you're not, let me know why for that as well. I know I am. But again, I'm going to try to read and reply to as many comments as possible. As you can see, I've been very busy, but I'm really working on it. I may just sit down in a couple of days for like hours and try to reply to as many videos going back to even like a week ago so I can try to reply to as many things as possible. I really appreciate y'all. Stay patient with me. Stay tuned because so much content on the way. Appreciate y'all. I am out.